suggests that perhaps there's a change in definition in how we deal with disabled. So there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed. Some of it's federal, some of it is state, and some of it is probably, and I think most of it is local. And so those issues have to be addressed, but they have to be addressed, I think, once we know the definition.
Well, I guess I kind of agree with what others have said about it's always plagued me that we have these vulnerable seniors that are in some of these buildings, and they are taken advantage of by people that are in there that are disabled. And, you know, we know immediately from the city and from the housing authority that there's nothing that they can do to separate them, and that any separation, even whether it's floors or anything, or security, is a violation of federal law, which I'm not sure that I really agree with or believe wholeheartedly, but that's been the response from housing authority in the city. That has not been something that we've been able to control as legislators in the state. But I will say that to the extent it is a state facility or a facility that's state owned, I think that notification is something that we might have some input in terms of, you know, forcing there to be some community notification if there is not. It's just not something that we've been aware of. We certainly happy to work with anyone on that. I know that we are very big on notification. As Senator Glad and I had a big issue over this last session with forcing the school board to make sure that they notified the community about changes with the school construction plan, to the point where they have to notify about 50 times. So we are big for that, and we would support it. Thank you.
First of all, it is a federal law that we cannot really deny inclusion to folk with disability in these buildings that we're going to expect to keep getting the funding. I do think that we need to, I think that we can notify the community, but we got to first know about it ourselves. This is a federal thing, it's not a state thing. It's not really a city thing, although housing would know because the housing authority falls under both the city and the feds. So other than it not being something that is thrust upon us ourselves, but we should have the wherewithal to make sure we notify the community of the problem and then work with the community to try to resolve it. But I don't know how we're going to resolve much of it if the Fed said you must have it in order to get the money to the states in order to keep the building up. We have to go with that. So that's what it could be, kind of precarious situation. But yes, notification should be done by housing, and we should know about it. If we know about it, we should be telling somebody about it.
Great. I got a question about water bills. And I really don't know whether this is something that is addressable in Annapolis or whether this is, okay. Well then, do you feel our water bills need to be increased, and what can you do to decrease the property taxes for seniors? That's a twofer. We're starting with you.
Okay. Read it again. Do we feel the water bills?
Do you feel our water bill needs to be increased? And what can you do to decrease the property taxes for seniors? That's sort of the two.
Water bills do not need to be increased. Water bills, especially in Baltimore City, were increased this year and for the next 2 years up to 46%, I think. It's 15% 1 year, 11%, and then 11%. So, and the water bill system is still not straightened out. Also, I spoke to Mr. Chu, who's in charge of the department, because people were complaining to me, and he's supposed to be working with his people so that they can have more consideration of the people who call in. The other part of that is tax decrease for seniors. I'm all in favor of that since I am a senior. That because you pay taxes over a long period of time normally, if you're a senior, then you should have some incentive to have a decrease and just to stay in Baltimore City. It should be worth something for you.
Well, this is one of the issues that I talked about at length is even published on my website. We call it the Homeowners Protection Act. one of the things that it does, one of the provisions of it is that it prevents, because one of the issues that we have in the city is it also prevents seniors or anyone from losing their home because of a water bill, which we thought was a very significant issue, that no one should lose their home from a water bill, particularly our seniors. And a lot of times the issues that come up with the seniors is because they get to a situation in their lives where they're on fixed income. Now they can't maintain a certain level. So that was the same scenario that we use when we talk about property tax. There's a property tax. One thing that is with the property tax is that the local jurisdictions have the autonomy to be able to add a rate on top of the state cap rate. And that's one of the things that we can reduce. We can actually put a cap on the state property tax, and then that'll provide some alleviation to our citizens.
Thank you very much for the question. As we talk about what to do in Baltimore City with some of the specific taxes and some of the specific needs as it relates to water and perhaps taxes, I would offer to you a couple of things. First things first, as it relates to our water system. In other counties, and I hear this all the time, in other counties, the water bills are lower. And the question is, how come they are lower? And the real answer is this: they are lower because they wrap their water bill into different systems. And because they wrap the water bill in a different kind of way, it sounds lower, but it's not. Or maybe they're paying it, because quite frankly, most of the water from Baltimore County comes out of Baltimore City. It does, it's our bill, so it's our water, but they don't pay us the same amount, or they don't charge us the same amount. So I would say to you that water bills are expensive, and water bills are calculated differently. However, as it relates to the property tax issue, that is both local, as we've heard, it's local and it's also state, but it is more local than it is state.
Thank you. This past session, we passed a number of measures to begin the process of reducing property taxes across the board in Baltimore City, and I believe that we will take steps each year to do so. It's the type of thing that I've learned in Annapolis. You must work with the leadership of the city and the leadership in Annapolis, and without that, you will not succeed in getting any legislation of that nature passed. Several years ago, I sponsored, jointly with Delegate Oaks, the two of us, sponsored a bill that would absolutely prevent a person from losing his or her home due to a delinquent water bill. It went to the Environmental Matters Committee. The chair put it into a study, changed it, watered it down some, and just put some more restrictive measures before someone can lose a home, but basically diluted the bill. And so it has never come out to the way it should. But I think it's something that, given all of the controversy, given the fact that we know that there's been serious questions raised with, wrong water bills, ones that are incorrect, we need an audit, we need transparency, and I think that that's actually legislation that we can pass in the future, given all the controversy that's been, as a result since the initial bill. Thanks.
Well, first of all, I do think that we should give our seniors some sort of income tax break or tax break, as you mentioned in the latter part of your question. And because of the ground rent, it brought the ground rent issue brought to our light the issue dealing with water bill. And we have been successful in our delegation and going through the city delegation to change some of that in reference to the kind of hoops you have to jump through in order for someone to take your property in reference to the water bill. I think it's like 3 or 4 things that now take place that was not there at first before we put the legislation in. So secondly, or thirdly, I would also think that we need to look at why Baltimore County pays so much less using our water. I think we'll look at that system and really reevaluate it.
First, as my colleagues have already said, we need adequate procedural protections for someone who is delinquent on a water bill so that they don't lose their house. As an example of ground rents and other constitutional issues, but that's something where we can find a way, and we should. And then on the second question, we have under the circuit breaker program, which I believe was initiated by Ben Gardner, and he was the speaker, we have limitations on the increase in your property tax rate if you are a senior and you own your home. everything is subject to being reviewed to see if it's adequately meeting the problems of today. But that is something that historically we have addressed, but certainly if case is made, we should do more.
Great. I'm going to ask the timekeeper to go 2-minute answers for this particular question, because I'm sort of combining here several questions. So I believe most, if not all of us, are very pleased with the $1 billion of planning and school infrastructure money that will be coming our way eventually. But there's a question about the community school movement and how you feel about that and how it's being incorporated into the plans for what's happening. Then there is a question about the closure rate of public schools, and the questioner points out that closure rate is higher in this district than any other district. And if you can address that. And I believe there was a third question that had to do with special ed. So if you can fold those three into a 2-minute answer, great. Or pick and choose. Mr.
When the $1.1 billion legislation was passed for school construction, in that same legislation, there was also a provision that said that Baltimore City had to close 26 schools. That wasn't celebrated as much as getting the money. The community schools program, while I'm in favor of having ran and set up the community schools program at Pimlico, it needs to be enhanced. It needs to be full community schools, full community engagement in those schools, especially in some of the most blight-stricken neighborhoods in the city. The community schools program concept is to bring resources into the school from the community groups, through businesses, nonprofits, other organizations that can assist the schools and the teachers and the principals with the student population of some of the, to decrease things like chronic absenteeism, whether they need energy assistance. Some of those problems they bring into the school, so that's the basis of the community schools program. At the same time, our district, in the 41st district, probably has 5 or 6 schools that are slated to close, including one that's at the building in my alma mater at Walmart. So we have some we closed Garrison, not we, they closed Garrison last year. Northwestern's scheduled to close, and it may not, but it's on the block. So those are types of things that when we look at the schools that we close, we also have to look at the impact on the community. And I think that sometimes when these schools were scheduled to be closed, they put a map up on the board and threw darts and said, these are schools we're going to close. I'm looking at how we're going to merge all of these populations. Like when you merge kids from Forest Park and children from Northwestern High School, you don't understand the community dynamics that go on there. So why would we do that? Why would we do that? Or sending kids from Park Heights to Douglas with kids infused from West Baltimore. There are some huge community dynamics that we look at. And this is just special. Really quick.
Okay.
Really quick, 2 seconds. As a father of a special needs child, I do believe there has to be more inclusion in funding for special needs children in the city.
It sounds like to me that in the city of Baltimore, and particularly in the 41st district, the infrastructure and the school buildings are to meet 1 million kids who would have come to the Baltimore City Public Schools. We don't have that kind of size anymore for the school system here in Baltimore City. And so while it's true that we want to make sure we have enough schools and enough school buildings, right now we have too many. And so if we fix the schools that we have and create a 21st century school building, you're going to start the process of getting exactly what our children need to educate themselves